Hello, everyone. Well, it's the end of 2019, and we are starting a new decade in corrections. Hi, I'm Gary York, True Prison Stories. Please subscribe if you like this video. Corrections 1 asked me to do a few things or talk about a few things that we had and our biggest challenges we face in 2019 and in the future. And actually, a lot of the challenges we face in 2019, we're going to face in the new decade as well, plus some more. So I wanted to talk to you about those challenges, take a little time to talk about the challenges we faced and future challenges of corrections. And I do want to say one thing right up front, though, please. We have to have an open mind, and we have to set our egos aside. Any organization that you deal with has challenges. Corrections just happens to have a lot of challenges because we face everything. We stand between the criminals and the citizens on the street. We face dangers every day. We face post-traumatic stress syndrome. We face all kinds of possible diseases that exist in the prison and things like that. So there's a lot of things to talk about, and we need to be open-minded. We're never all going to agree on everything, but we all have great ideas, and we need to share them with each other. We need to communicate. So communication is the key, I believe, in the future with management and the front line. We have to set our egos aside, and I want to get that out right up front before I get into my top 4 challenges that I think we're facing. But we have to be able to work with management, and management has to be able to work with the front line. Now, there's one thing that I mentioned the other day is that management, not all, but some management, some leaders are so worried about wanting to look good in front of their superiors that they're leaving the front line without leadership. And always remember, leaders, a good leader wants to see their subordinates succeed. And you want to see that you provided the leadership that allowed your subordinates to succeed. And some of those subordinates may pass you in rank and some will. That's just the way it is in the military and in corrections and paramilitary organizations. So you have to be proud when you're a supervisor and you see one of your subordinates rise up the ladder. Remember, you are there to help your subordinates succeed and be safe and get through the day and go home to their families. You are not there to shine the light only on you. And I want to get that out there because that is one of the challenges that many officers sent me when I asked them what is one of the challenges we're facing. And they're stating the me challenge. Supervisors want to shine in the light and be seen, a lot of them, not all of them, and they're not placing enough emphasis on leadership. You have to remember the true meaning of leadership. Leadership is getting your people, your troops, your subordinates to follow you willingly and want to follow you. So set the example, and then subordinates and frontline officers, you got to remember we also have to do our part as well. We have to be willing to set our egos aside and understand why some of these orders are coming down. It's okay to ask. In some cases, it's an emergency situation, and we don't have time to ask. You have to run out, take care of it. We can talk about it later. And in some cases, we have plenty of time to talk about why we're going to do what we're going to do. Let's all just use common sense and work together. All right, I wanted to get that out there before we start. My number 1 for 2019, and it's going to continue in the future, is correctional officer suicides. Correctional officer suicides in 2019 tied an all-time high. And we need to train all supervisors at mid-management and upper management. We need to train more on possible things to look for, struggles that we can see within our officers, and things that we can ask our officers. Because remember, a lot of these suicides are sort of like high blood pressure, the silent killer. We have to be always aware and watching, if as supervisors, watching our subordinates to see if we can spot any issues, possible depression, the down feeling, and go and ask if everybody's okay. And it doesn't hurt to periodically make your rounds and ask every single officer on your shift, how you doing? Everything going okay? It can be private. You're a supervisor. Ask them, how you doing? Everything going okay? Everything going okay here at work on your shift? Do you need anything? Is there something here we need to get you in the dorm to help you do your job better? Everything going okay? How's the family? Of course, you're not going to ask this in front of the inmates. You don't need to be asking this in front of other officers. You're a supervisor. Talk to your troops individually at times. Now, for all of us frontline officers, remember, we need to know too, if we have an officer and we see some issues maybe going on in trouble, you can ask them yourself, hey, everything okay? You know, Bob, everything okay? Everything fine? You need anything? It's okay for us to ask each other as well so that we can help each other. And tell people, always let people know that the agencies have things in place if you need help. Taking a little more time on this topic because correctional officer suicide to me is a very, very important issue, and we need to work together to help each other. Staff shortages is on my number 2. It's not going to change. It didn't change in 2019. Will it change in the next decade? Well, let's hope so. Let's hope that we can start ending the problem and get immediate attention on staff shortages. Why? Because staff shortages across the country are placing more work on the officers, more stress, and placing officers in danger. Not enough officers to cover the needs of the institution. Safety and security is in danger with staff shortages. Well, I know higher pay doesn't solve everything, but listen, we need to give higher pay to our officers. We need to have better hiring practices. We need to hire for quality, not quantity. We can throw anybody with a clean background check and a clean drug check in a uniform and throw them in, but we want quality. So let's attract some quality officers who are looking to make this a future and a long time investment. I retired with a little over 28 and a half years in corrections. My wife retired with 35 years in corrections. I had military prior to corrections, so she has more time than me. Do you think there wasn't days that we were like, oh my gosh, I just can't wait? Of course, that's going to be in any job, folks. But unless we fix staff shortages, people are going to continue to leave because the stress factor, the danger factor, it's going to affect their health, their mind, their body, and their spirit. I'm sending a message out to all prison administrators, legislature. The next decade, 2020, will not get better if you don't do something about our staff shortages. And find something, find an attractive package that will get people coming our way and get people staying for the long run. There is a pot of gold at the end. Your pension, your medical benefits. Some of you have 401ks. Some of us have what we call drop. It's a nest egg that you can have when you retire, so you have your pension and a nest egg. There is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, believe me. It's better than many jobs out there in our country. But we have to make it safe. We have to make it a place where people want to work, where people want to stay. And you can say what you want about that, but that's the truth. And until we do something, we're going to continue to have staff shortages, overworked people. All right, that was my number 2. My number 3 is prison contraband. We must have jails and prisons doing a good job, shaking down the dorms, doing cell searches, using body scan machines, using wands, using x-ray machines, using your pat downs, all those things. Okay, I've heard way too often this past decade, we don't have enough manpower to conduct the searches. So we go back to my number 2, staff shortages. So there's another reason we need to fix that. But guess what? If we don't get out there and shake down these dorms, and if there's any mid-management impeding that, because I'm getting some stories that we're so short-staffed, we're told we're going to have to skip the shakedowns, we're going to have to skip the cell searches, we got to get this done. I understand that can be a problem for management, but it's also a safety issue for everyone, for the staff and the inmates and the civilian employees. Never forget, the civilian employees are a huge part of the prison system. Without them, the prison system will not work, and we have to make sure they're safe as well. And they need this training that we're talking about as well. So, dealing with prison contraband. We have to also deal with the few bad apples. I have to throw that in because I'm reading stories every week in the news and newspapers about another correctional officer or prison employee or visitor being arrested for introduction of contraband. We won't harp on that forever, but it's happening, and we need to fight that as well. Prison contraband is huge, and it's a safety and security matter. We can't ignore it. Let's start shaking those dorms down, even if we have to get our supervisors out there with us to help fill in those voids for that manpower, because we want everybody to go home safe at night. Okay, management and frontline working together. That's my number 4, but it's huge, and I actually discussed it at the beginning. And what I had to say about that was both sides must learn how to work with each other and understand why everyone is doing what they're doing. Together we stand, apart we fall. Set those egos aside. I said enough about that at the very beginning of the video. Now, those top 4 challenges that we face in 2019 will continue in the next decade. Now, what will we face as well in the next decade to come? These issues are huge also, and we need to think about them. Providing officers the technology and training to keep up with all the new things that are going on, drones, inmates hacking into the handheld tablets that are being issued. Agencies across the country now are starting to issue inmates handheld tablets. They're being used by inmates to hack into other systems, we're finding, and we're learning. You know, if we're going to give them the tablets, then we better learn how to stop the inmates from using them wrongfully. Okay, there are inmates that do not use them in a wrongful manner, but those ones that are going to ruin it for everybody. You know I'm sort of old school. These tablets, I did a video maybe a little over a year ago when they started getting hot and heavy on these tablets, and I knew it was going to be a problem, and now we're seeing more and more stories about how the inmates are misusing these handheld tablets. So if we're going to give the inmates some technology to have in their hands, we need to train our staff, not just officers, but civilian staff, teachers, counselors, the ones that are there teaching the inmates and giving them an education. We need to know how to watch for new technology being used against us to introduce contraband, being used against us by the inmates to hack into systems. That's a big one in my area as well, because inmates can use technology to get messages out for escapes, to get messages out to smuggle contraband, to get messages out to their people on the streets, and now they can use long-range technology, drones and helicopters that you fly, remote control helicopters with cameras. It's all happening. We need to be trained in how to look for those things and how to stop it. We also need to look in the next decade in upgrading and providing our officers and civilian employees with personal protective equipment and how to use it. And we need to update it. I'm seeing too many lapidated pieces of equipment out there from back in the 90s, and I've seen some from the 80s still being used, as well as training. Update all our training. I mean, some of the agencies, folks, they're using some old training. That's way outdated. They're still using it today. Let's get that training updated to the next decade. This is 2019, folks. Some of the training videos are being shown are really old. Let's just put it that way. Some of the training that we're using for online training is really old. That's why you need to look into Corrections 1. Yes, I'll put a little plug out there. Sign up and become a member. It's free. And Corrections 1 is always keeping up with the new training and new technology. And you can put your comments on there and what you feel about it. You can get right online with Corrections 1, and you're welcome to put your input on there. That's part of us learning together and working together, okay? Now, another area that we're really hurting in to do all these things in the above that I just told you about. Okay, I'm going to end with this one. Funding for correctional needs. Well, all these things I just talked about, fixing staff shortages, fighting prison contraband, training updates, protective equipment updates, recruiting updates, all take money. And guess what the answer is every time we say, why aren't we doing this? We don't have the funds. So guess what, for you prison administrators way up the ladder, all of you corrections secretaries, all of jail administrators and sheriffs, you've got to get with your counties, and you've got to get with your state legislators, and you've got to get with your county commissioners and get that budget up there for the safety and protection of all who work or live behind the walls of our prisons and jails. Because without the proper funding and backing, we are not going to be able to accomplish these issues I've just discussed. You know, I'm going to be nice. Those higher ups and legislators, we know that you go home safe every night, okay? Can you please look at our jails and corrections and give us some more funds? And with that said, make it mandatory that the people who receive the funds and are responsible for putting out the funds in the right places have training, mandatory training, on how to use those funds to benefit the safety and security of all the people behind the prison walls and where that money needs to go. Because without proper money management and without the proper funds, we still cannot accomplish fixing these things I've discussed. All right, just a few things I wanted to put out there. It's the end of the year. Just in 4 or 5 days, we're going to have New Year's, and we'll go into 2020, a brand new decade, and I thought it was fitting to get some of these things out there. Folks, please become a member of Corrections 1. They have a lot of sponsors dealing with new technology now, and you can read all about it. We have all the stories of what's happening now on Corrections 1. Join it. It's free. And you get to put your input on the comments section. Okay, so we can all see it and we can all share it. Remember, folks, put those egos aside in the next decade. Let's all work together. Thank you. If you like this video, please subscribe.